This is Psych Overflow coming to you from the University of Southern California Psychology Department.
We're your go-to podcast for all things psychology.
Welcome, and let's dive in.
All right, so we'll get started. So my name is Anh Dao. I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Southern California, and we are here today early in the morning to record the fourth episode of our Psych Overflow podcast, which is a project started as the Climate Curriculum and Training Committee. So with me today are Armin and Iony. Iony is actually my advisor, so this is fun. But I will kind of popcorn it to Iony and Armin to kind of introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be back on the podcast. So as Anne mentioned, my name is Iony Ezawa, and I'm an assistant professor in the clinical science area here in USC's Department of Psychology.
And I'm Armin, a first-year BCS student here in the Psych Department. And Iony's not my advisor. My advisor is Payam Pirai. Yeah, excited to be here. This is my first real podcast.
Oh, exciting.
We are really excited about this equipment and hopefully a good podcast recording. All right, so I can't believe it's the middle of February. So I feel like this year has gone by really fast. And I think the spring semester is always tougher in terms of like work and study because there's less breaks to look forward to and less holidays and stuff. And so I thought that a good topic for today would be work-life balance. Since we have two students here and a faculty member, I think it will be interesting to kind of get different perspectives on what work-life balance means to you or how it looks like to you as of right now or in the past. So yeah, does anyone want to start?
I can share my experiences with work-life balance. So I previously worked as a research engineer before this. I don't know if that's public knowledge, but I share it somewhat frequently, so I feel like I might have said it at this point. And tech is funny because I think in tech, you can either have a really good work-life balance or a really not so good one. I was fortunate enough to work at a company where we had a great work-life balance, solid 9 to 5. It was also a research position, so we weren't really bogged down by specific deliverables, like it was almost like a very academic position where we were just focused on meeting like conference deadlines basically. So between then, it was like very chill. And I think that gave me like a good opportunity to transition away from the academic structure to like a more like 9 to 5 sort of structure. And I've tried to bring that to USC again. And it's difficult, I think. Being back in academia, I can say that because there's no real like 9 to 5 structure to it, I think usually people are pretty good with not messaging you past like 5 p.m. or something, or just not responding if you message them past a certain time. But especially as a first year student with courses, I've personally found it very difficult to maintain a good work-life balance. I don't know if you can relate, Anne, but yeah, especially when I compare it to when I was working in industry, albeit it was only like, a year and some change. Courses and research kind of have added like a lot of stress in terms of me feeling the need to, like, oh, I have to do well in my courses and I have to try to, do research now because that's what we're here to do. And yeah, like, I think most courses seem like they're structured to be taken home, like each unit you take is about like an hour in class. So taking, 3 courses is like 12 units. That's 12 hours a week that you're in the class. And you can assume that there's probably about 3 to 4 hours per course on top of that. So that's another 9 to 12 hours for on the week, which leaves about, 20 hours maybe for your other duties. And I'm not even TAing this year. So if you have to TA on top of everything, I think it's going to be even more difficult, which I have to do next year. So I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, TAing is something else. I love my students, by the way. Not complaining. Right. Ione, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I related to a lot of the things you were mentioning, and just for me personally, I've always been in academia, and it's the flexibility of it is both, I think, a big draw of it and also a curse. And so, with that in mind, like I think even progressively through the years, maybe my balance has been it's been tested for sure. Because I love everything that I do. Like I love teaching, I love mentoring, I love research, I love doing the clinical work. Like I love every aspect of it. And then to the point where I think I am definitely putting way too much time into a lot of these different pieces and maybe forgetting about other things like, oh yeah, I should have eaten lunch, or oh, I should probably sleep at least 6 hours a night, right? And so I see that, yeah, it's something that we really need to be aware about. Um, but going back to like the idea that it is so flexible, like we can have these ebbs and flows. Like there are weeks where maybe I'm only working like 20 to 30 hours a week. There's less deadlines. I can sleep, I can catch up, I can go on vacation, like I can take time off and spend time with family and friends. Um, but then at the same time, yeah, if it goes the opposite end, there's nothing, no like, I remember working in a VA one year, like tour of duty or someone like telling me it's time to clock out. We're not going to pay you overtime, right? So, yeah, but yeah, I'm curious, and like it's been your first year as well. Like I'm curious how it's been from your side.
Yeah, I think I relate to what you both have been saying. I think I was kind of um I thought because my post-bac was at a university in a lab that I would be like, oh, it's gonna be the same. Like I'm gonna keep my 9 to 5 schedule. And I completely forgot that I have to take classes. And so it's been definitely a little bit more challenging because I feel like besides classes, you also have to produce your own research, work on your own stuff, and then ITA on top of everything. Um, so it definitely took time to get used to. And I remember I was on a Zoom call with a friend one day and she was asking me, okay, what are your plans for today? And I was like, well, I'm going to work the whole day. And she's like, that doesn't sound so good. I'm like, you're right. So I took off that day and I came back from my self trip with a research idea. So I was like, okay, like maybe I should be taking breaks. I also like to think that work life balance is a continuous struggle. I feel like one day I feel like, okay, I got a routine, I got something good going, but then other things, life happens and I have to kind of recalibrate. So one thing that has really helped me is to be kind to myself and be like, okay, I noticed that I'm not taking care of myself lately. Let's kind of change that and not be hard on ourselves for doing that. So a lot of self-compassion and I think awareness that the work is never going to be done. I feel like if you're chasing for your to-do list to be as short as possible, it's not going to happen. So it's important to really take time for yourself. And that is actually really more productive than working all the time.
Yeah, I also wanted to add too that I think in every domain it's very important to kind of like self-impose a schedule. If you're working an engineering job, it's if you wanted to, you could work more than what you need to. Similarly, as a PhD student, I think you need to be a little bit more, I guess, more aware of it because it's not as strict as a job where there are specific times that the business is operating. Um, yeah, and then I think it's I kind of wanted to because I realized that the first thing I said was probably a bit like grim. So I want to come in and say that I have really enjoyed the flexibility of it as well. And there are some days too where I just don't feel like doing anything, and if I don't have to be on campus, I won't go. And I just take the day for myself, and that's great. Like most jobs, you can't really just have like a me day. Um, and I think that's been something fantastic as well. Not to mention, the work is I find it more interesting, so it's more fulfilling in that regard. But yeah, you do really need to, I think, as a PhD student, I've noticed that I really need to be aware of how much time I'm putting into things, and just make sure that I'm not overworking myself, past a certain time, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like burnout is a very real concern that we all need to be aware about. And so, just working, I guess, like even in a depression lab where we're often kind of checking in on others and seeing how they're doing, talking about routines, like my clients, like maintaining routines that are healthy and adaptive for them. Um, Sometimes I think we forget about ourselves in the process as well. Like we have a lot of, especially students, like so much on your plate between the classwork, the TA or RA ships, and just even the transitions. Like for a lot of students, it's your first time living in Los Angeles, and that comes with its whole set of surprises. And so I think it's really important for us to even kind of think about like not only I think sometimes people think about like time management when it comes to work life balance, but it's like the management of your priorities and yourself. And what do you need in order to be your healthiest and happiest and most adaptive? Because ultimately, that's also going to help you perform as a student. But you can't be a student if you aren't, yourself and happy and healthy. And so I think it kind of definitely is such a priority to think about like what is important for you, what do you kind of value in a sense, but also what do you need in order to succeed and reach your own goals.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I feel like when I notice that I start canceling like my personal things like doctor's appointments or hangouts with my brother on Zoom, I'm like, okay, there's warning signs that burnout is coming. And so I think one thing that's been really helpful is to also pay attention to kind of those signs and kind of knowing myself to be able to prevent those. Um, but yeah, thank you both for sharing. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. But I think our discussion from we were just sitting and chatting before about actually like classwork and how to like manage your expectations as a PhD student was really helpful for me personally. So I was just going to ask about any surprises you felt that, changes from your undergrad to grad. How have you kind of adapted to both be a good student, but also mainly focus on what's important to you, such as research?
Yeah. Um, I guess the short answer is I'm still adapting, and I feel like I haven't adapted, but I'm trying to. Yeah, because you're conditioned to want to get like good grades. You want to get A's, and I still do. That's still something that I think about if I perform poorly on like a homework assignment or an exam. I feel bad. I feel like, like, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I can't get a B in this course. And yeah, just in my first semester here, I was taking two classes, and one of them was quite relevant. I mean, they were both pretty relevant, but one of them was more so relevant to my work. So I kind of like convinced myself that, oh, like, it's okay to be putting in like 10, 12 hours a week just for this course and doing the reading, doing the homeworks. And then oftentimes, with depending on the course, it's not just the reading. You have to do a lot of self-studying. This was a course in the engineering department, so it required just, like more uh, kind of practice problems and things like that. And after that course, it felt good because I did well in it and I was proud of myself. But then that was kind of short lived, and then you just kind of realize, like the effort you put in for that. And I think now this semester I've kind of adopted a different approach, and it kind of feels like weird saying it, but we're told that you need to get just a 3.0 average to kind of stay in the program, I guess. Um, and I've been kind of just trying to remind myself of that, not necessarily to like slack off in courses, but more so just to not feel pressured to read every single thing in detail, have questions ready, for each lecture, make sure I read everything before I'm come to lecture, and just kind of like I just kind of use it to be a little bit easier on myself in that regard, but still make sure that I'm getting something out of the course. I think it's just a continual journey, and it's difficult because you're really conditioned to want to do well in classes. But right now, I would say that should probably be, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on the person, but for me, it's probably something I should be the least worried about, especially because a lot of courses don't directly pertain to your research, and I think you should be aware of how to divide your effort, I guess.
Yeah, I think I really relate to wanting to do well in classes. I always joke with students in my cohort that we're all the same personality type, very type A, and people are like, I'm not gonna put effort into this. And then you see them like with a stellar discussion post or something. I think one thing I learned is that people are not really thinking about me as much as I think people are thinking about me. And so I was like, oh, sometimes I think, okay, I'm not doing my greatest in class, but I don't think it really says anything about me. I think I stay the same person. I do my best in different circumstances. So you kind of have to know how to divide up your energy into different portions of your life. But I also wanted to ask you, we are always asked this question, like, so what do you want to be when you graduate? And I was like, I can't imagine being a PI because I'm like, I need someone to look after me. I need someone to tell me what to do. So I was just wondering how this transition was for you from a postdoc to a principal investigator.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and to be honest, looking back, like it's everything I've always hoped it would be. I don't know if I necessarily felt ready, but I'm like, okay, it's time. And so I feel very fortunate to be in this place, but I still have my mentors. Like I remember actually asking this question to my mentor at Ohio State, Dr. Dan Strunk. Like, when did you feel like you were on your own? Like you were finally, like I think I was joking around, like an adult, like running your own lab. He's like, you know, I think maybe I only started to feel that a couple years ago, and he's been a PI of his lab for over 15 years. Like, so I was like, okay, like I still have the support of like my mentors and people that I can look up to, and that helped me out when I'm having questions as well. And so I never feel like quite alone, or I don't know if that necessarily answers your question either, but I also just feel that it's just been it's something that you don't. I think maybe this is maybe an artifact of me having to learn some of these lessons along the way that I don't hopefully have to be perfect. Like I'm trying my best, and I think that like I really care about my students and the work that I'm doing, and I hope that that shines through. And I'm also very, very grateful and fortunate that I have the most amazing students in my lab. So it makes the job pretty easy. So
Yes, I think in my unbiased opinion, we're the best lab, but it's very unbiased. But yes, yeah, it's been wonderful having Ione as a mentor, and I totally agree. I feel like even though I'm no longer at my undergrad, I still talk to some of the grad students there because me and my friend Rachel actually are Ione's first students. So sometimes I miss having the sense of like I can ask an older grad student in the lab about things. So Sam, actually, one of my older grad students, told me that she's always going to be the older grad student for me. And I think that was just really reassuring. Right. So I think this was a really interesting discussion. So thank you both for your time and patience as my first time host. But yeah, do you have any remaining last words you would like to share or anything like that?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of reiterate that no matter where you are in terms of if you're in academia, if you're in industry, your schedule is kind of just up to you at the end of the day. Maybe I shouldn't say that because there are a lot of, advisors and bosses who are, push you a lot. But I think on average, it's really up to you how you divide your schedule up and what you want to, put attention towards. Um, and I think the main takeaway for me now is just that in academia, it's very much so still just in your court in terms of like you really got to be kind of proactive about it and just kind of make sure it's always in the back of your mind, especially when you have a lot of the kind of like duties that maybe people don't think about, like courses and TAing. Um, so yeah, I think I just kind of want to put that out there in case there's somebody listening who's interested in doing a PhD and maybe they thought it sounded, intense. It's not. I am really enjoying it. It is a learning process though, and I think if you ask any PhD student who's probably in the later years of their PhD, I think they've figured out what works well for them. And um, even now in my second semester of my first year, I'm also kind of figuring out what works well for me too.
Yeah, thank you. Any last thoughts?
I just second everything that Armin just said. I think that it really, really resonates with me too. Like finding out what works for you, because what works for you can be different from the next person, and even what works for you right now might be different than what works for you next year. So I was just kind of thinking about your priorities and needs, and honestly, that's going to help you on the other areas of your life and success as well.
Yeah, this is a random thought, but I was telling one of people in my cohort that I'm gonna write 1 page a day for my first year proposal. And someone said that sounds awful. So, but it works for me. So definitely don't feel shy about trying to find the ways that are maybe unconventional, but work well for you. All right, so that's all we have for today. So thank you for tuning in.
This is Psych Overflow signing off. Thank you for listening.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for future episodes, and don't hesitate to reach out to us with your feedback, questions, or topic suggestions.
See you next time.